Hi there, and welcome back to Let's Get Cooking. I'm your host, Rashida, and Happy New Year's, everyone. On today's menu, we're going to be making my New Year's Day favorite, and that is good old gumbo. Go grab your apron, come on in the kitchen, and let's get ready to cook. Gumbo is a dish layered with many flavors. Today I'm making the chicken sausage seafood variety. I'll be using, of course, chicken sausage, shrimp, snow crab legs, several different types of broths, beef, chicken, seafood. You want to have your green pepper, your onion, your bay leaves, gumbo filet, many other seasonings, Cajun seasoning salt. I use can of petite tomatoes. I also use butter and flour to make my roux. And believe it or not, I add corn kernels. So instead of okra, which is a traditional ingredient in gumbo, I choose to use corn. Okay, let's get started. First, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to start to boil my chicken legs in a pot of water. That's going to give me chicken broth and plus cook the legs. And then I'm going to discard the meat off the bone and then add that to the gumbo. So while my chicken legs are boiling, I'm going to go ahead and prepare my onion and green peppers. I'm going to go ahead and put those in the mini food processor to save on time. Dice those up. Some people use green peppers, onions, and celery. That's a trinity, but I'm going to leave out the celery this time and I'm just going to do onions and green peppers. I use about 2 whole green peppers and a whole onion. I'll take you through the process to show you how I dice them up. I can dice them up by hand, but I chose to use this little mini food processor, which did save on some time. There you have it. Our onions and diced peppers are finished. On to the next. Our chicken legs look like they're coming along just fine. Now on to the sausage. Today I tried something different than what I usually use in the past. I'm trying some andouille sausage. So I'm going to use about half of these different varieties of andouille sausage, and we're going to see how that tastes. Unfortunately, the stores were out of my traditional beef sausage. Here I'm just cutting them up and just getting them ready to go into the pot. I will saute them first because I like to just bring out some of the natural flavors, and then they'll be ready to go right into our pot. Looks like our chicken is done. I have poured out some of the chicken broth, which I'm going to use in the gumbo, and I'm going to take the meat off the bones. There you have it right there, and it's ready. Here goes the fun part. We are now making the roux for our gumbo. What is a roux? A roux is half fat, half flour. So in my case, I'm using 3 sticks of butter, which is 1½ cups to 1½ cups of flour. And I'm going to mix that. It's a labor of love, but we're going to take it from a pale yellow color all the way to a deep, dark, rich chocolate color. And that does take roughly around 30 minutes. You have to do it on a low heat because you don't want to burn the roux. Because if you burn the roux, you have to start all over. So you're constantly stirring, mixing with a wooden spoon or a whisk. And during this process, I want you to see how the color changes. And the darker it is, the richer it is, the more flavorful it is. And that's what the gumbo is built up on. It gives that gumbo, the soup, its thickness, its consistency, and also its flavor. So this here, y'all, is a roux. Stay tuned and watch the process. Another thing, if I didn't mention, is your first layer of flavor in the process of making the gumbo. So here we're starting off with this roux, and then we're going to add and we're going to build and we're going to add and we're going to build till it becomes this big old pot of delicious gumbo, which basically is like a big old pot of soup. Soup and stew mix, but more so soup. At this point, it begins to look a little bit sandy, a little bit rough, but as we keep stirring, it's going to completely smooth out. Um, as you're watching, you're going to see a whole lot of stirring because in order to keep that roux from burning, I have to stir, stir, stir. While the roux is still cooking, let's take a quick look at some of our seasonings. We're going to add salt and pepper, of course, some bay leaves, some Creole seasoning, some Cajun seasoning, some cayenne pepper, gumbo filet. Make sure you find gumbo filet. That gives it that gumbo flavor and takes it over the top. A little bit of hot sauce, Worcestershire sauce, and some thyme. Let's peek back into our pot and see how our roux is coming along. You see there's a slight color change right there. It's kind of a light brownish, almost a caramel color. So it's still going through its transition. Ah, look at that deep dark brown. And still needs a little bit more time. So don't stop there. Let's keep going a few more minutes. And here we have landed at the final result. So we're going for that deep dark chocolate brown. And to this, we're going to add our veggies. We're going to add our onions and green peppers. And it's going to sizzle. So from here, I turn my pot completely off so it stops cooking. Now I'm going to go ahead and mix those onions and peppers in with the roux. And now your kitchen is smelling. Now the aroma is flowing. It's starting to smell great in the kitchen already. And what you don't see is I do add in some garlic also, about 3 cloves. So I'm going to stir that in and get prepared. Next step, that's one step of flavor. Next step is the broth. Let's start to get this to look like gumbo. We're going to add plenty of different broths. The broths give it flavor. We're going to add chicken broth. I'm going to add beef broth. I'm going to add seafood broth. Instead of water, each broth adds that flavor since we have chicken broth, seafood broth, beef broth, and that just combines and adds a burst of flavor. And that is also the essence of a good gumbo. If you have homemade chicken stock, chicken broth, by all means use that. If you don't, it's easy to find in your stores. I am using 32 ounces of chicken broth, 32 ounces of beef broth, and 32 ounces of seafood broth. I did add 2 extra cups of chicken broth for good measure. Then on to the Worcestershire sauce. I added 1 to 2 teaspoons of the W sauce and to enhance the beef flavor. How do you say it? Worcestershire. Then go ahead and mix that in and start to liberally add the salt, the peppers into my pot. And I'm very liberal with the salt and pepper because we are flavoring a lot of gumbo, a big pot of gumbo. So you need plenty of seasoning. Then we have our Creole seasoning right there. We're going to add some garlic powder. I put a garlic on almost everything. I love it. Then there we go with the Cajun seasoning. You want to add some Cajun seasoning. And it's to taste. If you don't like any of these seasonings, you don't have to add them. But I would say definitely probably about a tablespoon of each. Then good old seasoning salt that goes in just about everything. And finally, about a tablespoon of thyme. Dry thyme is fine. Pouring in. Last bit of that seafood broth right there. It's coming together. This is the base for the gumbo. Add in a can of petite tomatoes, petite diced tomatoes. I prefer petite to just the regular dice. I don't like big chunks of tomatoes in my food, so I use just a can of petite diced tomatoes. And that just adding more flavor. Stirring real well, stirring real good because there's a lot going on in this pot. I'm going to stir throughout this whole video, all the way up until the end. Going ahead and adding some more seasonings because it's going to need it. Now it's time to add in our sausage that we cooked for a short amount of time. We want to go ahead and add that into the pot. Once again, we cooked it just to bring out some of the flavors, and therefore that little juice, that oil can help flavor the gumbo. Then next up is the chicken that we deboned off of our chicken legs that we made earlier in the video. This was about 3 to 4 pounds of chicken legs, 12 chicken legs to be exact. Just took the meat off the bone and we're adding that in. With our 2 meats added to the pot, we're going to give it that once again good stir. Looking around, taking out any big items like that big piece of onion. We don't want that. Discarding that, continuing to stir and adding our 3 bay leaves. With the bay leaves, you have to remember when it's finished cooking to go ahead and dig those out because nobody wants to chomp on those. Once I get done stirring this time, I'm going to let all the ingredients in the gumbo just cook for a while and come to a boil before I put the lid on and simmer it. There goes our boil. That's what it looks like once it starts rapidly boiling. At this point, it's time to turn it down and bring it to a simmer. Turning our fire down, we're going to let this simmer for a good 30-40 minutes and place the top on and let it cook. Gumbo is a labor of love, but it's so worth it at the end. There's a song that goes, "Let's get down to the good part." And when I'm adding in these snow crab legs, boy, that's one of my favorite parts is the snow crab legs. So let's get down to the good part. I'm adding in 2 to 3 pounds of snow crab legs. And then I'm actually going to cook this gumbo about another 30 minutes. So now I can get the flavors from the crab. We're layering. It's coming together. It's going to be good. And just like that, this labor of love pot of gumbo is finished. What I did was turn the fire off, add in 2 pounds of shrimp, put the lid back on and let those cook for about 10 minutes. Shrimp, they don't take a long time. They can cook with the heat that's in the pot. Now just take it all in, you guys. This is the gumbo. This is almost finished. I just need to add 1 cup of frozen corn kernels to the gumbo. Mix that in, let it sit for about 10 minutes. Then I'm going to go ahead and I like to put my gumbo over a bowl of rice, which I've already prepared. And then the family and I are ready to eat. Happy New Year's, everyone. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time on Let's Get Cooking. Have a blessed day.